Hello everybody and welcome back to the Double Dip Draft Season 4 Draft Analysis featuring myself, Spood, the coach of the Southtown Sandslashers, and...
Aurora, coach of the Huntsbrook Hunters.
And today we're going to be going over some useful information that you might want to know about Division 1's draft and also the Double Dip Draft YouTube channel and complex bands and so on and so forth. To take it from the top, essentially the first information that we'd like to get out there real quick is that we do have a different YouTube channel for Double Dip Draft that we no longer have access to. That will be the one that was previously linked. If you're wondering why there's a new channel, that is why there's a new channel. This is going to be where all of the future content and all of the past content, when we finally get around to re-uploading it, is going to go. It's going to go here. And also, before we get into the draft analysis, I wanted to make sure that, just so that we're on the same page, Aurora and I are both in Division 2, so we're going to be taking a look at Division 1 bias-free. We don't have to talk about each other's drafts, we don't have to talk about our own drafts. We're going to try and get two people from Division 1 to also do a draft analysis for Division 2. So hopefully that will be coming in the near future with some different hosts. But for now, you've got me and Aurora, and I'd actually like to throw it over to Aurora so that you can explain the bans and rules and all of that fun junk before we get into the meat and potatoes of the draft analysis.
Alright, so in order for our draft league to function as we envisioned it, we have several rules and complex bands put in place to hopefully make it more balanced and a little bit more beginner-friendly, since we do have some varying skill levels among our players. First of all is that Dugtrio's Arena Trap is allowed, along with Gothitel's Shadow Tag, Gotharita's Shadow Tag, and Wobbuffet's Shadow Tag.
It actually is completely irrelevant information given that none of those Pokemon were drafted at all, but just worth noting that if you're looking at the tier list and you're wondering why is Dugtrio an S tier pick or a tier 1 pick, that is why. Arena Trap was allowed. Wobbuffet also, Shadow Tag legal, so is Gothitelle. They're a bit lower tier, but still they do have access to their trapping abilities.
Yeah, and there is a lot of potential shenanigans that could be done with it, especially given some more experienced players. But we figured, since we have done this in the past as well, and it worked fine, we do it again, and, well, now it went completely undrafted.
Right.
Aside from that, we also have a bunch of things that are banned, namely Zygarde's Power Constructs, both 50% and 10%, Cinderace's Libero ability, Raboot's Libero ability, and Moody.
Yeah, the ability Moody is banned as represented by the Glalie in the ban list. Glalie not technically banned. Functionally, it was banned because, I mean, nobody's going to draft it without Moody. People probably wouldn't even draft it that popularly with Moody, but Moody is an ability that is very unfriendly to the skill level that we're operating at, and we tried to tailor-make our tier list and our complex bands in accordance with what we thought would promote the healthiest league for overwhelmingly players of a lower skill level.
Mm-hmm. And the final cherry on top is there's no Dynamaxing or Gigantamaxing allowed whatsoever.
Yeah, we borrowed the WBE format for the last two seasons. Double Dip Draft Season 3 was WBE Season 5 format, and now Double Dip Draft Season 4 is WBE Season 6 format. If you actually want to quickly let the people know how many Pokemon are drafted and how many from each tier, just so that we're all on the same page for when we get into the draft analysis and they're wondering why there's a weird number of Pokemon.
Of course. All the Pokemon are divvied up in 5 different tiers. Each team will consist of a single Tier 1 and a single Tier 2, 2 from Tier 3, 4 from Tier 4, so that's the bulk of the teams right there, and 3 Tier 5s.
And the good thing about that is that nobody messed it up during drafting, and we don't have any confusion about the amount of drafted Pokemon. That is, of course, a tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that the draft did not go amazingly smoothly, but that's besides the point, I suppose.
And also in the past.
Thankfully, we do have a full roster of teams with 11 valid Pokemon all the way across the board. You might see some stranger drafts or some people that had a different approach to the drafting process, which we'll talk about as we get to the individual drafts. But until we get to that point, if we want to throw it over to the full draft analysis, Aurora, are you ready?
I am super prepared.
Excellent, because we're going to be starting with IDM4, the coach of the Brussels Espeons, top seed for the tournament in total. One of 3 people thus far to have won a season of Double Dip Draft. The other 2, of course, are very sexy, very smart, very present in the material.
Very much so.
Just a fun little tidbit. That's me and Aurora are the other 2 winners. So the only winner not in this call currently is IDM4, looking to make a deep run this season. He has a pretty good looking draft. He was able to snipe Reggie Elicki from you.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to go for that Elecki. That I know also Scoots before me also was gunning for it.
Yeah, so Reggie Elicki was a pretty popular choice. IDM did go relatively low in the turn order. I think he was 11th or 12th in the drafting
11th,
process.
Yes.
So he did manage to land Reggie Elicki, which I believe was his intended first pick anyway. But it definitely did not look great for the people underneath IDM in drafting order who really wanted that Reggie Elicki as well. But looking at IDM's draft, I mean, speed? I mean, that's, what jumped out at me.
Ass.
Yeah, he's fast. He's fast. He's got a lot of utility. He's got 2 Prankster users in Whimsicott and Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl, of course, being the really good one, and Whimsicott being a pretty good one, but... Whimsicott's nice because it's naturally speedy. It has a workable special attack stat. It has a workable offensive type coverage. I think that Grass and Fairy is pretty good for hitting people with things. You tend to be using Grass type moves on 4 times weaknesses, in my experience.
Yeah.
So.
Whimsicott itself also allows for various amounts of shenanigans with Substitute, with Leech Seed, with screens, U-turning out, Tailwinds.
Yeah.
A lot of different tricks that can come out of the little cotton ball.
Whimsicott actually does take advantage of its relatively low HP stat, because with Leech Seed, if your HP is low and your opponent's HP is high, you're going to be recovering more of your percentage of HP per turn than if you were to have a higher pool to work with. So that does help Whimsicott abuse priority Leech Seed a bit better. At the cost, of course, of its living a hit to get off the Leech Seed. But if you get in on a forced switch or something like that, or if you're behind screens, which IDM has no shortage of screen setters, Whimsicott can get some work done. I'm kind of impressed. He does have the classic Dragon Fairy Steel Core, which I think we'll be seeing a lot of in this division, specifically over Firewater Grass.
Yeah, definitely, especially given that his Dragonite is extremely bulky, his Steel-type Cobalion is extremely bulky. The only little bit frail part of this combo is Whimsicott, but it's usually switched in on immunities regardless.
Grimmsnarl is not massively bulky, but because of its priority screens and its fairy typing, I think that it does pretty good, actually, to round out that core. And you could also even count Silvally to an extent. I would expect to see Silvally Fairy at least a couple of times.
Silvally Fairy, Silvally Steel, and Silvally Water tend to be the 3 more used typings that Silvally tends to go for.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of depending on the team shortages. That is true. Definitely also keeping control of the field is going to be his very solid offensive core as well. Because he is not lacking in offensive pressure. Dragonite's 134 base attack and setup potential behind screens, behind multi-scale, with Dragon Dance and various other abilities. Special attack is a little bit more on the lacking side and will rely a lot more on setup from IDM's part. Stuff like Swoobat setting up several Calm Mines.
Yeah, I think
maybe going for stored power or stuff like that.
Yeah, I really, because IDM does kind of have a reputation for screen spam between Light Screen and Reflect. He likes to do that a lot, and I think that especially we did end up getting to this, I guess, a little late relatively, or maybe they just got their matches done very early. But at the time of recording this, there are 2 matches already played for Week 1, one of which was IDM's match, and we got to actually see Dragonite multiscale behind screens, popping a weakness policy and taking maybe like 11% from a super effective move.
Yeah, even an Ice-type move at that point would not have knocked it out and would have allowed IDM to pop his weakness policy, set up that Dragon Dance, and just sweep the rest of the team.
Yeah, and I could see that coming in through for Swoobat as well, like abusing Simple from behind screens to be able to actually live a hit with its reduced bulk. Because Swoobat's not exactly a Pokemon that takes hits, but behind a screen, I mean, you can take one hit, and sometimes it's really just you need that one turn, because Swoobat's pretty fast with Simple at +2. I mean, even those attacking stats are not too shabby when you're dropping, like, you know, ×2 base 80 power stored powers in one turn. I guess that's IDM's draft, right? I mean, that's pretty much it.
I think that's all that's like very notable to mark here. Next up, we have Phantom Knight, coach of the Haunted Mansion, Gengars, who I recall did go. No, he went after me, so he went pretty late in the draft as well.
He was the second to last. He was a.
Yeah, he was second to last. Yeah, right. Also, relatively unexperienced with the draft format as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit reflected in his draft. He could have done a hell of a lot worse, based on what I'm looking at, honestly. When I was taking my notes for the video, I remember thinking, like, Tornadus and Registeel are a great defensive core. Like, they actually cover each other really, really well. Especially because Tornadus, of course, it gets Regenerator. It's got some really solid, like, some really solid bulk. It's really damn fast, so you can kind of get that quicker pivot. I don't know. I like the Registeel Tornadus combo.
It's a very decent like defensive core. There are like answers to it. There's a lot of ways to hit both of them neutrally, but just given like their defenses, it's hard to break through with just neutral hits.
Right.
Because Tornadus is able to constantly like U-turn and keep up pressure with like still very decent offensive stats as well.
I did actually the typing is interesting that you mentioned that he's he doesn't necessarily have types that cover each other super effectively all the way, because you'll see if you look at the draft, they're specifically like Dark and Ghost. He struggles a lot against. He's low on like proper immunities, although he does shore up his lack of a ghost type with Electivire and Marowak. I don't know, you could snowball sweeps on him. He did have a solid showing week 1 in his match versus IDM, only getting 2-0'd, which, you know, you gotta take that with a grain of salt, I guess. But he's definitely got the potential to keep, like, offensive pressure on, but, you know, aside from, obviously, the defensive core we were talking about with Tornadus and Registeel, it's hard for him to take a hit from, like, a couple of different types that just, it's hard to switch in on.
Yeah, definitely. I feel if a Pokemon is able to set up on him, he's going to have a hard time recovering from that and trying to take control back of the match. We did see Scolipede in the one match that had already been played have a very solid showing, just throwing out a single Swords Dance even after getting intimidated and still being able to wipe the floor.
Just drop Pokemon, yeah. I think he got three kills?
It got 3 kills, and that also means, you know, at least 3 speed boosts, meaning that's at that point like nothing is outrunning it anymore. And it was even paralyzed, and it was still outrunning a lot of Pokemon on IDM's team. And as we saw, IDM's team is no slacker when it comes to speed.
No, definitely not. So I think Phantom Knight's going to be good, like, snowballing into late games, but it's where you notice that there's a lot of more rigid cores in the tiers and in, like, the draft sort of meta. I don't think Phantom Knight has, like, a really, really rigid, solid core that you can, like, take a piece out of and see it crumble. It's really more like, you know, a couple Pokemon are just going to die, but as long as he's throwing his, like, threats, as long as he's got, like, you know, Gengar in the back, Scolipede in the back, even, like, in some instances you can see, like, Gardevoir get some use, or like Electivire or whatever. You just can't be slacking, because he can hit you hard.
Yeah, he's definitely like aside from Tornado's Registeel Core, he's definitely going to be looking to, instead of keeping up a defensive structure, trying to keep a hold of the match and keep offensive pressure on his side. Try to keep momentum going, and just sort of, I think he'll be very happy in trading 1-for-1, whereas other people's defensive core would, like you said, would sort of crumble.
Yeah. So it's hitting hard. I mean, that's how you win Pokemon. You take the HP down to 0. So that's that is a method to doing it. So I honestly I was impressed by his week 1 showing, and I look forward to seeing how he performs through the rest of the season.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some Magic Bound shenanigans, some Trace Gardevoir shenanigans.
Oh yeah, he's got real shenanigans on his team. He can definitely get some goofy stuff.
Yeah, and despite the fact that he doesn't have a ground type, he does still have 2 electric immunities in both Marowak and Electivire.
Yeah.
So you can't just be spamming Thunderbolts against him.
That's true. And I mean, he has at least one flying type, which is really important because, again, the more you look at it, the more you realize, like, oh man, ground is going to run through Electivire, Marowak, Registeel, Scolipede, Gengar. I guess Scolipede takes neutral, but it's not really, like, taking hits amazingly well. I mean, it can take hits better than maybe, like, a super frail Pokemon would, but I don't know. If you were to take out Tornadus, then ground it becomes a real issue for Phantom Knight's draft.
Yeah, especially given that Gengar no longer possesses its Levitate ability as of Generation 7.
Yeah. Well, because Curse Body's just better. Because why bother with 1 ground immunity when you can just disable Earthquake, and then you have everyone's a ground immunity?
Except that Earthquake doesn't make contact, and thus Curse Body will never proc.
Anyway, throwing it over to our next draft, Firebolt, coach of the Minnesota Magikarps, coming back for his 3rd season in Double Dip Draft?
Yeah, 3rd season. He did not make playoffs his first time around. He did make playoffs his 2nd time around.
That's right. Actually,
and now he's going to be here, hopefully looking to, take it all this time around.
Yeah, season 1, or rather his first season, which was season 2, he missed playoffs. Actually, if you go back and you really, analyze the footage and all, Firebolt would have landed playoffs in Season 2 had he not missed a Fleur Cannon in his match versus Nightfall.
He missed playoffs by 10%.
Yeah, by a 10% miss. So, Firebolt, I mean, he is no slouch. He's come a long way since, like, SSL days. And it's always exciting watching him play. And I think this time, this might be my favorite Firebolt draft. I do like it. I do think it has a couple of weaknesses, but looking at it, I mean, I see a draft with Corviknight on it, and I think to myself, like, okay, that's a good Pokemon.
That's worth definitely looking out for.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different little aspects to this team that are, able to be ran. You've got the potential of, Swift Swim Ludicolo is in there. You can do there's a lot of different nonsense you can do with Necrozma. Corviknight is on its own a defensive core.
Yeah, really, it doesn't need to be supported necessarily. And I think even with support, you can see like Tyrantrum, Guzzlord. I mean, Dragon is just like a good typing defensively, and I really do like Guzzlord and Tyrantrum for being able to come in and take hits in certain situations. That maybe complement Corviknight well, because you can actually see a light sort of Fairy Dragon Steel core between like Sylveon, Guzzlord, Tyrantrum, Corviknight. Not that Sylveon is necessarily taking hits in the way that a Fairy type would want to, but just having that immunity in the back, and just having it be a good Pokemon anyway. Like Sylveon can do a lot of damage and has a lot of utility with being able to get past Sub with Pixelate, Hyper Voice. I don't know. I like his draft. I think it's good. I think that his specialists can do a lot of work. Like, I can see Necrozma winning a game or two by itself. I could see Volcanion and Swampert being interchangeably good depending on what opponent, you're fighting in a given week. I could see Guzzlord, Tyrantrum both putting in work. I mean, Tyrantrum Head Smash, Jesus Christ, it's 150 damage Rockhead. Like, you're just doing damage.
It's definitely some devastating hits that Firebolt can be throwing out. We've also seen Bolthoon, surprisingly enough, steal some games in the past, as well as Guzzlord,
Yeah,
coming out with surprising sweeps.
Boltund dropped a lot off the back of the tier list, because in the last season, using the WBU tier list, Boltund was quite high. I think it was like a tier 2 or tier 3 or something like that. It was definitely not a tier 5, which is where it's at now. And Firebolt drafted it that season as well, and did make it work quite well. So I think to have Boltund in the back in this meta, you just can't sleep on it. It's a good Pokemon. Guzzlord too. I mean, I've used Guzzlord. That thing, if you don't have just like a fairy type move, you might just lose to it.
Guzzlord is just a guy.
It's a bit pigeonholed by team building, or rather, like from the team building stage. You know, there's just like 1,000,001,001 counters that you can bring for Guzzlord, which is why it's so low. But in either a late game scenario, or depending on like what the opponent has in terms of like fairy coverage or fairy Pokemon, Guzzlord can seriously just get in and start killing things and not dying. I mean, 223 HP is a lot of HP. Even if its defensive stats are like whatever, like its HP is really, really high.
Yeah, it definitely just sort of like soaks up hits despite its like very lackluster defensive stats. And it actually also is bolstered by the, both the Fairy Dragon Steel core that it's both a part of, and the Fire Water Grass core that does technically exist within Firebolt's draft, even though every single part of it is at least part water type.
That's true. Yeah, the Water Fire Grass core is Water Grass, Water Fire, and Water Ground? Or, I mean, you could even just consider Volcania Ludicolo 2 parts of that anyway. I don't know. I like Volcanion a lot. I do think it is actually tough to utilize well in draft. Because Fire's weaknesses are just, like, rough. It's nice that it has Water Absorb to offset the neutral damage to water, and just having a water immunity in general, while it's not, like, your top priority in draft, it's one of those things that's just, like, really nice to pick up, like a nice Storm Drain, Water Absorb Pokemon.
Yeah, you'll be surprised how many teams sort of get whittled down by just an opposing water types just spamming Scald at it, and eventually getting some burns, getting some chip damage.
Yeah,
Volcanion is able to completely negate it by just, healing up from it.
Yeah. It does basically sit on bulky waters in most situations, although it is weak to something like Toxic. But that's when you look at the clerics on Firebolt's team and realize he has one cleric. Which,
Sylveon.
Yeah, that's fine. His hazard control is also not my favorite. Corviknight Defog is kind of a given if he feels like threatened by rocks, which overall don't do a lot to his team in terms of just like raw damage. And I don't necessarily even see him like switching out a lot besides into Corviknight and like maybe Ludicolo. But he can only set up rocks in Toxic Spikes with Drapion. So, I don't know. In terms of like the whittle game, I don't like that aspect of his draft.
Yeah, it's also, I didn't actually know that beforehand that Volcanion got defogged, which is surprisingly the only Pokemon on his team that's actually weak to rocks.
Yeah, that's true, which is funny. I don't ever expect Volcanion really to be running defog, but, it can, I guess.
It can. It's like Volcanion's coverage exists. It has options it can run. Mm-hmm. Having used it in the past myself, it usually does end up with just sort of a third move slot that's kind of like whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's like not too far-fetched to occasionally run defog on it, even if you don't really plan on using it.
Yeah, I suppose so. I also don't necessarily love the type distribution insofar as his team is really weak to ground, aside from Corviknight Ludicolo, which obviously, the problem with that is, like, I can sit here and be like, okay, well, his team struggles with ground types, but it's like, the Corviknight's going to come in every time. So unless your ground type can check Corviknight, which is not likely, you're still just not in any luck until you kill it.
Yeah, though then again, a lot of ground types do, well, not a lot of ground types, but there are like some shenanigans possible with like options like Smackdown, bring Corviknight down to the ground, and then, an Earthquake on a guaranteed target.
I guess so. Does Excadrill get Smackdown?
Off the top of my head, I would not be able to tell you.
I don't think it does. It's because I remember I was looking at like Excadrill versus Corviknight, because that's going to be one of the week 1 matches is Claire's Excadrill versus this Corviknight. And I remember thinking, like, Jesus, Corviknight just walls this Excadrill so hard. Like, the hardest it could hit it with is like a Rock Slide for like 24 without Swords Dance or something. I don't know. It's tough for certain ground types, even good ones.
Yeah, but then again, it also still needs to be careful that, it has some kind of offensive option, either Body Press or Whirlwind, in order to not, have it just be set up on.
Mm-hmm. That actually, there was a slightly infamous match from last season where we saw Jason, the Heart for Haunch Crows, brought a Corviknight versus Chemith, the Neerdowell Nidokings, who actually we'll be covering later on in this draft analysis as he's in the division. And the Corviknight, it was Iron Defense Roost, Defog Body Press, and it couldn't touch Gengar. So Gengar could, because it didn't have any flying type moves. So you do actually have a bit of 4 moveset syndrome with Corviknight, where you kind of have to pick and choose. Like, okay, am I going to get my hazard control and my setup and my recovery move and the one attacking move that I pretty much have to choose if I want all the other utility that this Pokemon has. If you want to pivot, you're losing a moveset because you're giving it U-turn. It's tough, yeah.
Yeah, you're definitely going to have to make some tough choices during team building, and definitely have to really consider the opposing team.
Yeah. But that's about all I think I have to say about the Minnesota Magikarps, if you want to throw it over to Scoots.
Yeah. Next up, we've got Scoots coaching the Dumblespood's army.
That's right. Holding it down.
Yeah, holding it down. He went after IDM. A lot of the Division 1 people went very late in the draft, huh?
Yeah, really?
Coming to realize that now.
Yeah.
Not rigged.
Not rigged. It's definitely not rigged, because the organizers came 14th and 16th or something.
You were last.
I was dead last. 16th out of 16 teams.
Which isn't necessarily a drawback, but,
kinda.
It changes your available pool.
Yeah, it does. I will say that it is rough. I mean, it sucks to have everybody pick before you. Getting that initial double pick is nice, but then having to wait for it to go 34 people or something like that before it comes back to you, that sucks.
30 people exactly, because it's 30 people. 15 people up.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So 30 people before it comes back to you to get to. I mean, that's a lot of picks to lose. But that's fine. I mean, there are benefits. Anyway, not here to complain about my drafting position on the list. Dumblespood's army. Do you have any initial takes about this draft?
Well, sort of similar to IDM, Scoots went for picking a tier 1 first round and sort of building his team from there. He initially wanted to go with Regieleki, but IDM going right before him managed to snipe that one away. Mm-hmm. And now he is here with Spectrier, which fills a similar sort of niche, as it's like a fast special attacker. Spectrier is a bit different in that it tends to snowball, because Grimnay is kind of like Moxie for special attack. Mm-hmm. And its move pool is garbage.
Yeah, it basically...
same goes for Regieleki.
You basically have Shadow Ball. The meme with Spectrier is that it comes in and it just clicks Shadow Ball. So the game plan for Scoots, from a team building perspective, is okay, I need to make sure that my team can whittle down the enemy team and remove any normal types or ghost resists, like dark types or whatever, that are going to stand in the way of Spectrier clicking Shadow Ball 5 times and winning. So, to that effect, he actually, I think, has my favorite, most explicit, solid Dragon Fairy Steel Core in this entire division. Between Tapu Fini, Scizor, and Gudra, I mean, that's thick and fat and bulky and whoa. These Pokemon, they do stuff.
Yeah, that's a disgusting core to have to go up against, and it's definitely not going to be easy to break through it.
Yeah. I do not look forward to seeing people try. Looking at his draft, the more I looked at it, Scoots, and actually I don't want to spoil too much, but there was somebody else who, on first pass, I was kind of it's got stuff in it, but the more I look at it, the more I'm like, God damn, this is a scary, this is someone that I wouldn't want to fight, right? I would say really the only thing that I don't like about Scoots' draft is his hazard control is horrific. He can defog away hazards pretty well. Like Feeny and Scizor are both great defoggers. Rhyperior is his only hazard setter, and he only has rocks.
Yeah, he's definitely sort of lacking in the field control in that department, because like he can only set stealth rocks, and he doesn't have a rapid spinner, meaning that if he wants to get rid of them, he will also have to get rid of his own setup. But aside from that, like just raw stat-wise and like offensive pressure-wise, aside from that, there is no slouching here.
No, it's a great
all of these
draft.
Pokemon can hit for truckloads.
I love the Spectrier Glastrier combo. I think that's super duper cool. Just obviously, it kind of partially a gimmick, right, to have both of the horses from Crown Tundra, but it's like a very dynamic kind of win con. Like to have Glastrier be your slow, hit really hard, defensively bulky Glastrier can come in, take a hit, and start like pounding, or Trick Room snowballs with Reuniclus. Whereas Spectrier is so fast and so oppressive with Shadow Ball that really, I mean, you can set up a Trick Room, have Glastrier come and get 3 kills. Trick Room ends, Glastrier dies, Spectrier comes out and gets 3 more kills. I love that like combo. It's a very like dynamic, it's very adaptable to an opponent's draft. Like I like that his win cons are so, they cover each other really well, I feel.
Yeah, like if Spood had to face IDM, which he will at some point,
eventually.
He definitely probably does not want to challenge IDM on the speed side of things, so he might switch to the Glastrier centric build with the, like you said, Trick Room and other potential speed manipulation and momentum keepers like Scissor.
Yeah.
Parting Shot from Pangoro. Heliolisk also gets U-turn apparently.
Yeah. I do love Heliolisk in this draft, because as we get down this list, you're going to start seeing more and more weather abuse, and Heliolisk is very adaptable to weather abuse. There's a lot of sand, specifically 2 of the remaining drafts have some kind of sand setter element to them, and I think that will give Scoots a bit of an advantage, just having like Heliolisk to sort of backfill and counter like weather, even though he doesn't have his own like instant weather setup.
Yeah, Heliolisk is a bit funky in that it has 3 separate abilities all working in different kinds of weather. Dry Skin working well in rain for healing it, Sandveil working in Sandstorm for giving it evasion, and Solar Power powering up its special attack moves in the sun. The only thing it does not cover is hail.
Yeah. I don't know. I love Scoots' draft. Aside from just the hazard control, I am actually infatuated with this draft. I think he really chose a great set of Pokemon.
Yeah, I think that hazard control is gonna have to be his biggest Achilles heel, and the thing that people have to
abuse,
try and exploit against him. Try to keep forcing switches, because a lot of his Pokemon like Spectre, like Glastrier, they're very usually one-trick ponies. No pun intended.
Literally, yeah.
In that, they usually just have 1 or 2 moves that they want to spam, and so if something comes in that's able to either resist, be immune, or shake it off, it forces a switch.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not able to keep up those hazards on the opponent's side, while the opponent is able to constantly keep putting them on his side, he's gonna get whittled down, and he'll slowly lose that battle.
Yeah. And to his credit, if he can find somebody, because I know, because I spoke to him actually recently about this, Scoots has been kind of moving and shaking a bit, trying to get some trades going. He's been in contact with Claire and Jason to try and trade off some Pokemon to sort of shore up some weaknesses on his team. And thus far, people haven't been very receptive to his offers to trade. But I think that if he does find just that 1 or maybe 2 magical pieces that slot right into his draft, I think that this is in contention for the best draft in this division, certainly.
Oh, definitely. I feel trade-wise, it will probably open up a little bit more as week 1 and 2 come by, as people get adjusted to their teams, as people might realize a few weaknesses that it had that they didn't see at team building, at drafting. Just from experience with using them.
Yeah.
And, looking to shore those up later down the line.
Yeah. Speaking of shoring things up, let's talk about Woody! The Schaumburg Salamences GTP Woody, some random Charizard, some random Rapidash, known by many names. Let's find his team real quick. There we go. The Schaumburg Salamences. This guy has a Dragapult. And that
Dragapult
is a good damn Pokemon.
It is terrifying. I used it myself last season. It ended up winning me the last season. It is good. It is fast. It has great special coverage. It has acceptable physical coverage. And it is backed up by a lot of shit.
So we were talking about Spectre just now on Scoots' draft, saying like, yeah, this thing snowballs. It hits like really, good shadow balls. Dragapult's faster. Dragapult can pivot. Dragapult can like paralyze things. Dragapult can run physical or special to an extent. Its abilities are crazy good. I mean, Infiltrator and Clear Body. I mean, Clear Body is a little less good, but situationally, I mean, it still works. I don't know. Dragapult's a great damn Pokemon. Dragapult is a lot like Corviknight insofar as like it's a Gen 8 Pokemon where you take a look at it and you're like, okay, that's the thing that my draft has to be ready for.
Yeah, again, having used it myself, I have a lot of experience with using it and what people tend to use against it. Mm-hmm. Its biggest sort of weakness is that it has like acceptable attack and special attack. It doesn't have a great way of setting up. Mm-hmm. So like sort of its biggest boon is both like the combination of its speed and its special attack move, or not move pool. Because despite the fact that it won't be hitting the hardest with just base 100 special attack, if it can always hit super effectively, it is very good at just cleaning up late game.
Yeah.
And given its ridiculous speed, there's a lot of different good items you can run on this thing. You can do some substitute nonsense with the special attack boosting berry. I don't actually know if it has like a sound-based move to get throat spray with. That might actually be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be something to look up. I don't know. Aside from Dragapult, this draft is a weird draft. I actually don't think it's bad, but it's the other notable thing about it besides Dragapult, just because we could gush about Dragapult for the next 2 hours. This guy has 2 weathers. He has Hippowdon, Sandsetter, and he has Ninetales, Drought. So he not only has 2 weathers, but he also has 1 Pokemon each to abuse those weathers. Charizard gets Solar Power in the sun, and Lycanroc gets Sand Rush in the sand. So adaptable to different drafts. It does, I think, make it a bit predictable, assuming that he tries to commit to one weather or the other. From a team building standpoint, you're gonna look at it and you're gonna think, okay, if I'm good in sand but like a little weaker to sun, then I really only have to pack for sun, because that's probably what he's gonna bring.
Yeah, especially also I feel given that Lycanroc, while its speed boost in the rain is obviously like really good, and 115 attack is nothing to mess around with. Mm-hmm. I feel it's definitely not the best sand sweeper that is out there.
No.
So I feel that while it's definitely a threat and definitely something that has to be taken into calculation, you don't necessarily need much more preparation for it other than something that just can take hits from Lycanroc. Mm-hmm. Also, sort of that Lycanroc's move pool tends to be a bit
bad.
Meh.
Yeah, not great.
Yeah. Charizard, on the other hand, 109 special attack boosted by solar power. That's hitting hard.
Yeah, that it does hit quite hard, and base 100 speed is actually very solid. I'm kind of impressed by Woody. Woody's got some speed. I mean,
yeah, Woody's team is also like no slouch.
No, definitely not. And he actually has a solid defensive core. He's rocking Dragon Fairy Steel. In a sense, Copperage, a Haxorus, a Azumarill. It's not bulky, but it's it does have that immunity.
Azumarill has got 100 base HP and 80 in both its defenses, so it's not likely to be
not bulky. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not bulky.
It doesn't.
And also,
melt
he has like
three
dragon types to slot into the dragon part of the Dragon Fairy Steel.
Yeah, when I think Dragon Fairy Steel, I kind of tend to think of the bulkier dragons as kind of like my switch into like, I don't want to take a fire, water, grass, electric hit.
But much of the elements tend to be resisted.
Yeah. Noivern and Dragapult are both super fast. I actually love Noivern. I think Noivern's a great pick in draft. It's so fast. It's got the U-turn pivot. It could drop some solid Dracos. Noivern's great. I think Noivern was a great tier 4 pickup. Sharpedo is also like it can put a lot of pressure on. Azumarill Belly Drum puts a lot of pressure on. There's a lot of stuff that you can be scared of in this draft. Really, I'm kind of impressed.
Yeah, definitely never underestimate any Pokemon that has speed boost, because as soon as it just gets off like a boost or two, and it can't be outsped by anything else anymore, you're in a huge amount of trouble.
Yeah, it's very scary.
There's also something to be said for actually running this many dragon types on your team. Because there used to be a really popular strategy back in Gen 7 called Bird Spam, which basically just relied on spamming flying type Pokemon at your opponent until all of its resistances were dead, and it could just sort of go in unopposed. So just sort of having a bunch of the same type slowly wear down at their own switch-ins and resistances until they eventually break through and suddenly there's nothing stopping them anymore. There's a theory to that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't hate this draft. I do like it. If I had any real gripes, it's that his defoggers, removing hazards, his defoggers are both very weak to rocks. Which, he doesn't have any spinners. I think Rhydon is kind of a weird pickup when you have Hippowdon. Because I think they fill a somewhat similar niche. Obviously, Rhydon's worse because it doesn't have sand. But I don't know. I think the bulky, slow ground type that hits fairly hard is better as Hippowdon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love Rhydon. I say that having drafted Rhydon last season and having loved that Pokemon. I don't think that that's entirely necessary. I think Woody would probably benefit from seeing if he can trade Rhydon for something that, I don't know, either abuses weather harder for either sand or sun, or I don't know, just filling up, maybe getting a rapid spinner if there's one available. Maybe a cleric, because he doesn't have any kind of cleric.
Yeah, spreading status around Woody's team right now just sort of leaves them all permanently with that, unless they are back in rest.
Yeah, and Will-O-Wisp hurts this team so badly if you look at it.
Yeah.
So that might be something to consider as well. But...
So Woody is definitely going to have to be careful. He's definitely going to have to play it smart. Because I feel that he definitely does not have the most straightforward of all drafts here.
Yeah.
He's definitely going to have to sort of fall back on his few lower picks to kind of shore up some holes.
Yeah, because the interesting thing about this draft is I see a lot of 1, 2, 3 Pokemon core combos, but it does lack synergy in a way outside of that. When you see Noivern coming in, it kind of, again, not the same thing, but it fills kind of a similar niche to Dragapult, just worse. Rhydon fills a similar niche to Hippowdon, but worse.
Arguably, Charizard sort of fills a similar role to Ninetales.
Yeah, but better.
Arguably better.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that Woody has a team that it's got threatening individuals or sets, but as a whole, you knock one table leg off, it falls over. I think that there are certain things that his very rigid cores of weather setter, weather abuser, or fast pivot accomplish that they don't. It's just one thing that it all does. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be... The individual sets for a lot of Pokemon are going to be a lot more predictable, whereas, what exact 6 Pokemon he's going to bring, I feel that's sort of where Woody will have to find his strength.
Yeah, definitely. But all in all, no, I don't think it was a bad draft at all. I think that's a very good draft.
I feel that's played well. This draft can definitely take it all the way.
Yeah. And moving on, would you like to introduce the next draft?
We have got the Neerdowell Nidokings as coached by Kenneth.
As coached by Kenneth. No bias here. I do have to let the jury know, just letting everyone know my conflict of interest. This is my brother, Kenneth, coach of the Neerdowell Nidokings. He had a bit of a rough inaugural season in Season 3, going 2-5, which was a very common placing. I think 5 different people ended at 2-5 last season.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Which, you definitely could do a lot worse than 2 wins in a season, especially in a season that was as stacked as Season 3. But coming into this season, Kenneth had some good fortune as the very first pick, number 1 in the line.
He was first last time, too.
He was. He has good luck with the team building order.
Yeah. Again, not rigged.
Not rigged. Not rigged, I promise. And he led the march. The very first Pokemon drafted in Double Dip Draft Season 4 was Tapu Lele.
Yeah. The Psychic type Tapu Pokemon, Psychic Surge, get that Psychic terrain up.
Yep.
Thank fuck that this thing didn't get, what is it called, Expanding Force?
Yeah, it does not get Expanding Force.
Yeah, Jesus.
I will say, Alakazam does get Expanding Force, and I want to gush a little bit about the synergy on this team. I think Psychic Terrain plus Expanding Force Alakazam plus the Hail abuse that he has going on is great. I think that there's a not insignificant number of Pokemon that end up with priority fighting type moves, and that causes a lot of issue for your, like, Hail, snowball sweepers like Arctozolt, Sandslash, even Vanillux to an extent. But being able to block Mach Punch, Vacuum Wave, being able to bring in Alakazam and have it not take chip from Hail, I don't know, being able to drop Expanding Forces and then switching into your Hail setter, getting a Veil off, or... I don't know. This team it's really hard committed to Hail, which is kind of a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah, Ice type is generally not considered to be one of the top tier types for Pokemon to have, and this team is packing 4 of them.
Yeah, Hail is also instantly not considered the best weather. I would actually say that most people consider Hail the worst weather.
Yeah, it has finally gotten some support since Generation 7 with Pokemon getting Slush Rush, which doubles their speed if Hail is active.
And Aurora Veil as well is a really good addition.
And yes, Aurora Veil, which is a screen that reduces both physical and special type moves by 50%.
Yeah, this team, it's tough to have this team in a division where a lot of other people are going to be running counter weather. His week 1 is going to be versus GTP Woody, the Schaumburg Salamences, and you're going to see, like, oh my god, Schaumburg Salamences have sand and sun. And Neerdowell Nidokings can somewhat offset that by having 2 Hail setters in Alolan Ninetales and Vanillux. But, man, it's tough. When you are running weather, it's easier to run your weather when you're not fighting a different weather. Like, you kind of have to wrestle for field dominance in a way that you don't otherwise have to. But on the bright side, he does get to keep his terrain up. He doesn't have really anything or anybody that he's playing in this division that's going to be terrain abuse. Yeah,
I do definitely feel that one thing on the weak side of this draft is definitely its type coverage. Again, the 4 ice types all sharing like similar weaknesses. It tends to, like, a lot of switching in is probably going to have to be done on both the part of Gastrodon and just some parts Claydol.
Yeah.
And those cannot switch in indefinitely.
No.
Claydol lacking in recovery, and Gastrodon always having sort of that threat of the 4 times weakness to grass.
Yeah. It's definitely... I don't see an amazingly strong defensive core in this draft. I do see a very oppressive offensive core in the right situation.
Definitely. Like, the duo of Tapu Lele and Alakazam is definitely going to be something to watch out for, and of course both Arctozolt and Alolan Sandslash, if Hail is up, are going to be giving a lot of teams a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But I feel the Neerdowell Nidokings are definitely going to have to fight hard to keep control of offensive pressure, because defensively they are going to topple over really quick.
Yeah. It's definitely a draft prone to... getting just dismantled if you take the wrong Pokemon out. But it's, again, to his credit, like, setup sweeping is negated. He was the one to grab Ditto in Tier 3. And Ditto can put some work in on enemy drafts. It does de-incentivize setup sweeping. It's which I think is something that this draft is you know, somewhat weak to. Although I will say that between Slush Rush and like Alakazam being able to consistently sash because of Magic Guard, and also not being able to take priority, assuming that the terrain is up, it's not as bad as it could be, right? Like, getting setup swept, it's already something that the Nidokings don't necessarily struggle a lot against, but especially not with Ditto.
Yeah, but he's definitely gonna have to keep in mind that, you know, as soon as he starts losing control of offensive pressure, that things are gonna start crashing down quickly.
Yeah, because his shit's gonna die in one shot, basically.
Yeah, most of it.
Yeah. So, tough. I mean, I look forward to seeing, this is, to me, kind of like a high variance, like either this draft is just gonna sweep an opposing draft, or it's just gonna get swept by an opposing draft.
Yeah, honestly, personally, I kind of like it a lot because I tend to like hyper offense personally.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel this is very teetering on a very hyper offense.
Yeah.
Like aside from Gastrodon, there's no like real good defensive switching anywhere.
Yeah, not really. But I guess we'll see. I mean, you know, I've been impressed. I've seen certain drafts go far with just full hyper offense. I mean, Love and Sky, the Chicago Snubbles, did not have, if I remember correctly, a very strong defensive core last season, and was able to put in a hell of a lot of work. So we'll see.
Yes, and I think that should bring us to the next team.
That's going to be...
introduce them.
That's right. That's going to be Claire, the Maryland Manectrics, making her debut appearance in the Double Dip draft. Claire is a very old school player from the SSL days. Hasn't played, self-proclaimed, hasn't played since Gen 6. So Claire is someone to keep an eye on. I will say, I mentioned earlier that sort of when I was looking at Scoots' draft, the more I looked at it, the more I liked it. This is the other draft where the more I look at it, the more I'm like, man, this is a good draft. Like, this draft kind of just does a lot of stuff really, really well. The first and most obvious notable thing is the Excadrill T-Tar core. Classic, like, sand offense. Excadrill has two different sand abilities that are both situationally, like, more or less viable, and even outside of sand, Mold Breaker is an incredible ability, being able to smack down levitators with earthquakes. And even outside of that, I mean, Chandeler's an amazing, like, offensive pressure type mon. Rotom Wash is one of the best pivots in the game still, or at least certainly I think in Draft League, one of the best pivots. Especially if you draft Rotom Wash and Excadrill, that's one of the things that Rotom Wash would be most scared of, and suddenly it's not even in play. Claire has a lot of great potential, like, viable leads in Klefki, Galvantula, Azelf. Priority is not too bad. I mean, Prankster Klefki, you've got Triage Comfy in the right situations. Scarf Chandelure is not priority, but it's still out here, like, smacking down. I like this draft.
It's fast.
Yeah.
And so far, we've been sort of smacking a lot of drafts for sort of their lack in both hazard removal and hazard setting.
This is not what it is.
Claire has got both of those and more to spare.
In spades. I mean, Claire has every, obviously aside from Copperage's, like, G-Max hazard, has every hazard, at least somewhere. You know, T-Spike, Spike, Stealth Rock, Sticky Web.
Stealth Rock's definitely the most omnipresent here, and probably going to be the most used.
And Rotom Wash and Klefki are both incredible defoggers. Rotom Wash with just, like, the bulk to be able to sustainably, like, come in, defog, leave, come back in, defog, leave. Whereas Klefki is, like, if you're in, like, a pinch in the end game and you need to make sure that, like, a sash is maintained or, you know, like, a certain amount of chip is not taken, you can just bring Klefki in priority defog, and it's not even an issue.
Yeah.
And Excadrill is also Excadrill, arguably the best rapid spinner in the game, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Like, especially, like, given that Claire's team is very good at just setting up rocks and just sort of pissing off again. Being able to get rid of your opponent's hazard without not, while keeping your own on the field, like Rapid Spin does, is definitely something I feel Claire's going to be looking to abuse a lot. Especially against sort of opponents like we've mentioned before, they're lacking in the hazard removal.
Yeah, and I honestly do think that this is a draft that kind of, its endgame lends itself a lot to, like, hazard stacking. Like, I think Chandelure does really well if your opponent's switching in on Rock, Spikes, T-Spikes, Sticky Web. I mean, like, any combo of those things is going to make it so much easier for, like, Calm Mind, Triage, Comfy to come in and, like, clean up with priority, like, you know, Draining Kiss, Energy, or Giga Drain. Or for, like, Galvantula or Chandelure to come in and just clean up, like, hitting things hard after they've been whittled down. I don't know.
Definitely.
I think this is a dope draft. The only things that I'm not really sure how Clawitzer going to fit into this draft, but, you know, whatever.
I think the only thing I would sort of like touch on myself is that aside from Excadrill, T-Tar, and Ninjas, Claire does not tend to be attacking physically a whole hell of a lot. Meaning that like very powerful special defensive Pokemon like Chansey, Blissey, Porygon 2, a lot of just Pokemon that switch into special moves and don't take jack nor shit from it.
Yeah.
She's gonna struggle with, as both Tyranitar and Excadrill are like really her only options against them.
Definitely. But I think Claire has a great draft. Definitely one of the best in this division, possibly one of the best in the entire league, frankly. I don't know. I'm impressed. I will say the draft is somewhat fighting weak, but even that is offset by like bug types and fairy types and, you know, Chandelure. Yeah.
I feel that a lot of this team, when it's not like switching out and hazard stacking, it's gonna sort of rely on the same principle that Chemistine seems to be working on. And that's just, I kill you before you kill me.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to fear opposing fighting types if you just knock them out in one go, or they take like 60% of their health on hazard switching in.
If they're just dead on arrival, then it doesn't matter if you have a counter, because you have to be able to kill something with it. And even then, like, Comfy does such a good job of like pressuring fighting types out just with like the priority Draining Kiss.
Which is also really annoying because it, like, you know, it keeps healing up. You literally just can't prioritize it even with extreme speed.
Yeah. Comfy. I think the Pokemon I love most in this draft is Comfy. Just because I think it's seriously, like, applied. It's one of the best value picks I've seen in any of these drafts. Like, the more I look at Comfy, the more I'm like, man, this is a great draft. Like, this is a draft where I think Comfy will really excel, or could really excel.
Especially as like one of two fairy options it's got. It is the more offensive of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Given that the only other one is Klefki here, who's probably going to be used to, you know, prankster nonsense.
I mean, it is not uncommon to see a Klefki have no attacking moves. I mean, and a lot of people will just run Foul Play instead of Dazzling Gleam, so I don't know.
Yeah. And then, you know, the Pokemon I personally like a lot, because Kenneth really showed me the power of this thing last time around. It's Ninjask.
Yeah, Ninjask is... You can't sleep on Ninjask. You really can't. You can't look at it and be like, that's a Route 1 bug, fuck it. You know, you have to take it, like, you have to be ready.
Yeah, Speed Boost is terrifying. 160 base speed is terrifying. Mm-hmm. It doesn't hurt a lot initially.
But after with Swords Dance...
With Focus Sash and a Swords Dance, this thing can start running through a team all of a sudden, and you don't know what to do against it if you don't have any priority of your own.
Yeah, Ninjask is a great Pokemon. This team, you know what this team does so well is just pressuring things. I mean, Rotom Wash is great defensive pressure. Klefki Galvantula can sort of set the stage for, like, you know, hazard, like, field control, you know, with the weather control. Excadrill can go so fast, hit so hard. Tyranitar can Dragon Dance. Ninjask can, you know, Swords Dance, Speed Boost. I mean, like, a lot of stuff on this team is just, it'll really, it's scary. You know, it's scary to be in versus it.
Yeah, and also I feel something this draft does better than the Neerdowell Nidokings is that, like, it has better defenses to fall back on if things do go south a little bit. Dragalge is surprisingly, like, spongy. Rotom Wash is, again, like, its combination of type and ability make it resistant to a lot of things, weak to next to fucking nothing, and still have, like, good defenses.
It's only weak to grass, right?
Overall, it's just grass. Yeah, that's it. Man, fuck this thing.
Yeah, fuck it. Why is Rotom Wash allowed to play?
It's grass and like a Mold Breaker Earthquake, but you know, the main user of that is Excadrill,
So Woody did get Haxorus, which also Mold Breaks, so that might be a thing. But you know, it's not like Rotom Wash can't just Will-O-Wisp it or something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
This draft is nuts. This draft is nuts. I look forward to seeing good things from this draft because I think it's going to be really good. And why don't you introduce the last of our drafts that we're looking at today?
The very last draft that we're going to be looking at today is Maz coaching the Minneapolis Magnezones. And I know Maz, like himself said while drafting, that he mostly picked Pokemon that he personally likes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think despite that, you know, he has definitely come out with like a surprisingly diverse draft capable of a lot of different things.
Yeah, capable is the word to describe this draft. Obviously, getting Mew as your tier 1 is great. Mew is an insanely good... I mean, like, people love Necrozma, and I think that Mew is just kind of a better Necrozma, really, in draft.
Mew is just kind of like the Joker card that you, like, set in for, like, anything that your draft sort of lacks in, whether that be, like, hazards, setup sweeping, stall breaking, whatever it might be. Mew is there to, you know, it has your back. It's got you covered.
And he's got good sweepers. He's also kind of dragon stacking the way that Woody is, with Como Salamences being sort of his main offensive threats. But, I mean, Como by itself is an incredible Pokemon. It's not as good as it was in Gen 7, of course, but, I mean, it's still, you know, nothing to sneeze at. Having a decent Omni Boost is always a good thing, and definitely being able to sub-belly drum Salic Berry sweep things is not too shabby. Plus, surprisingly usable abilities in draft. Like, I could see a Como theoretically using all 3 of its abilities in different situations, depending on who you're fighting.
Yeah, especially given like the very weather-heavy tier that Maz has found himself in, like Overcoat, making sure he doesn't take that chip from Sandstorm.
Yeah, could be good. I mean,
very
even Bulletproof, like Bulletproof sitting on Spectrier is huge.
Yeah, Bulletproof sitting on Spectre, Soundproof sitting on Sylveon.
Yeah, dude, this thing is crazy. This is the division for Como to be in.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna have to be like on the coach facing this team to sort of like gauge what's ability Como is most likely to run.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes for Salamence actually, because like both Intimidate and Moxie,
great ability.
They both support 2 like different playstyles of Salamence. But if you prepare for one and not the other, and you end up facing the other, you've made a massive mistake.
Either you can't kill it, or it kills you. That's what happens. I also do love Togekiss and Metagross.
Oh, I hate Togekiss.
Yeah, Togekiss is stupid good. It's stupid good Pokemon. Great in draft, really. Great otherwise, too, but especially in draft. Mass also no stranger to drafting a baby Sandcore between Gigalith and Sandslash. You can actually get some decent stuff going. Like Sandslash and Alolan Sandslash are somewhat similar in what they accomplish, because Sandslash can Sand Rush and Rapid Spin and Earthquake things really fast. I mean, not like crazy fast, because it's only 65, but, you know, doubling your speed is always going to be crazy, even if you're just slow.
Yeah, it still usually puts you like above a lot of like even like very fast Pokemon.
Yeah.
Though it does still need a lot of investment, whereas some like weather sweepers tend to forego that.
Yeah.
Sensei's kind of needs to run all speed.
Marini's an interesting lower tier choice. I actually do like the way that his lower tiers are kind of made to cover his higher tiers. Like, you can see that Como, Salamence, Togekiss are all rocking a major ice weakness. But then you've got Lapras, Marini in the back that are going to be taking very little, unless there's like a Freeze Dry in play. And even then, Freeze Dry is going to be neutral to Lapras because of the ice.
Yeah, I love the Lapras pick, actually.
Yeah, the Lapras is really good.
Yeah, like, again, speaking of just like 3 separate, all very usable abilities, Water Absorb, Hydration, and Shell Armor.
Yeah, even Shell Armor. Oh my god, if this guy has to fight like Urshifu eventually, I mean, he's got something in the back.
Yeah, and even though I don't think anybody on this side of the draft has a rain team, like Hydration Rest that's a very real set for Lapras to run.
Yeah.
And it is obnoxious.
Yeah, it works. It works well. And you don't even have to run Sand Gigalith either. I mean, sturdy Gigalith with like rocks and just kind of bulking a little bit. Like, you can make that work too.
Yeah, like don't underestimate Gigalith's stat. That's 135 base attack on a pure rock type.
Yeah.
Which is like very hard to resist.
Yep.
That thing hits like a truck.
Yeah, I do actually like this draft. I think it came out quite well.
Yeah. Also with like, I feel definitely a boon of this generation to a lot of flying types, like Salamences has been, because they tended to lack good flying stat beforehand.
Oh, yeah, dual
now
wing beat.
Now we finally have the move dual wing beat.
Yeah, here's a little bit of double dip lore for you. Dual wing beat is the best move in the game, and if you get dual wing beat, you automatically rise a tier in the tier list.
Definitely.
I don't know. I was looking at it. That was the thing I was even thinking about recently too. Was I drafted Talonflame on my team, and it gets dual wing beat, and that's crazy. That's a great thing for it to have.
Yeah, because like before it was sort of forced to either run acrobatics and no item.
Yeah.
Which leaves it sort of at the mercy of its very low actual offensive stats. Or you had to rely on Brave Bird, which would damage you, and then Gale Wings wouldn't activate anymore.
So Dual Wing Beat is a great compromise for that Pokemon, and I think, yeah, like Salamence hugely benefits from Dual Wing Beat. I also love the pick of Jolteon. I think Fast Electric type, Archetype, good to have, just solid. He can sort of use it to pivot a bit. He does, again, like a Dragon Fairy Steel Core, again, with, he's got 2 Dragon types you can choose from, really, with Togekiss and Metagross. And Metagross also a great tier 4, I think.
Yeah, Metagross is a heckin' steal for tier 4. Like, I think we might have made some errors here.
Maybe. We had a whole tier list council sit down on this one, I promise. We thought it through. If you're like a WBE tier, like, huge Mongo, big brain, competitive Pokemon player, you may be looking at this tier list and going like, what the fuck is even going on in this league? I promise, we put a lot of thought into it. It's custom tailored for the player base that we're cultivating. So, I promise, we're smart. We're
smart. It's not rigged.
It's not rigged.
Trust us,
it's not rigged. I swear
it's not like either of us planned to like get Metagross and then got sniped.
So look, WBE kind of designed their tier 1 and 2 as the same general goodness of Pokemon, which is why you only get one of each. But they kind of split them up, not arbitrarily, but in such a way that like you couldn't get Pelipper and Kingdra or Excadrill and Tyranitar. But you'll notice that we didn't do that at all. We kind of tier 2 is just like a slightly weaker tier 1, just based on the way that we built our tier list before we adapted it to the WBE format. It took some compromising. So it's not a perfect tier list, but I think we're pretty proud of it.
Yeah, I think it turned out well enough. I don't think there's like any one draft that I would point to and be like, we let something broken happen and we should never let it happen again.
Right, no, I think I'm pretty alright with what we ended up with.
I think the closest we've ever gotten to that was the Rain team that Scoots had, season 2.
Yeah, in season 2. The Mega Swampert, Pelipper, Ash Greninja setup. That was a mistake.
Yeah, no, how the hell did that end up happening? I have no idea.
I don't know. Well, look, you can't win them all, I guess. But that's the flash look at Division 1's drafts. And you said this wasn't going to take a long time. You know how long we've been recording?
How long?
It's been an hour and 10 minutes.
That sounds very reasonable.
Sounds about right. Unless there's anything that you want to say to head us off, thank you so much for joining us for Division 1 draft analysis for Double Dip Draft Season 4. I've been Spood, coach of the Southtown Sand Slashers. Joining me, of course,
has been Aurora, coach of the Hoonsbrook Hunters, and we both wish you all the best of luck in your matches.
Happy trails!